All right, so now we're moving on to our second video in this section B, and we're still going to be talking about the revision of factorization. So everything that we do in these three videos, because this section is going to be broken out to three videos, every single thing that we do in these three videos, you should have learned before and you should have at least a foundation of. And then if you're still struggling with it, then we will strengthen that foundation and we will learn to master it within this next week or so. All right, so we're still going to be focusing on the same essential questions. Now, when I teach factoring, I only teach one method, and that is the X method. All right, when you're factoring, there's multiple methods that you could have learned before, multiple methods that you can use, and I'm not going to force you to use one way or the other. So if I'm showing you this X method, I will ask that you give it a chance because I do think it's beneficial. But if you've learned another way and you're already very strong in another way, then by all means use whichever method you like when you're factoring. But the reason why I will only show you the X method is in the past, if I were given questions like this, x squared plus 5x plus 6 and maybe 2x squared plus 3x plus 1, and I asked kids to factor, I used to teach different methods for everything, where this one would be different than this one here because this has a number other than 1 in front of the x squared. And since I taught all these different methods, the kids seemed to get confused by it and they didn't know exactly when they should use each one, and it did more harm than good for them knowing all these different methods. So rather than showing all these different methods where they were maybe just okay in each one, I just started to do one method, and it seemed that once I only showed them one way, they all became stronger with their factoring because no matter which method you use, you're still going to get the same answer. So in these videos, you're only going to see me use the X method unless the problem has like a shortcut or a formula that we can follow. Then you'll see me use something other than the X method. All right, so here we have two basic factoring problems. These are two of the easier problems that you will see throughout this chapter and throughout the rest of your high school career with mathematics. So here we have x squared plus 6x plus 8. So remember, I'm only going to show you guys one way to doing this. If you know another way, by all means, you can use that, but I want you to at least focus on this X method now because I do think it's beneficial in the future when there's a number other than 1 in front of this x squared. So when you're using the X method, the first thing you do is you draw an X. And then at this top part here, you write the addition sign, and then down here, you write the multiplication sign. That just helps you remember where you're going to put certain numbers at. Then the next thing you do is the number in front of the x squared, so in this case it's 1, you multiply it to the number that's all by itself, the constant, the one without the variable. So 1 times 8 is equal to 8. And we put that where the multiplication sign is, so we put 8 here. Then this middle number, this plus 6x, or whatever the number is in front of just the linear variable, so just the x or whatever variable we're using, that number drops down to where this plus sign is. And if it's a negative 6x, it will follow with it. All right, then we ask ourselves, which numbers multiply to 8 and add up to 6? Now, one of the things you have to be aware of is if this sign is positive, that tells me that my two factor signs will be the same, and then whatever sign this is tells me what both of them will be. So since this is a positive and this is positive, I know that both of my signs, my factor numbers, will be positive. So I can write these two plus signs here. And then I ask myself, what are numbers that multiply to 8, so the multiplying sign to 8, and add up to 6? And if you're not sure, you can write out all of your factors of 8, so 1 and 8 and 2 and 4, and you can add them together. It gives me 9, this gives me 6. So we know it's not 1 and 8, and we know it has to be 2 and 4 because they multiply to 8 and add to 6. All right, then I write these two numbers out. All right, then the next thing that we do is whatever number is in front of this x squared, we need to divide both of these by that number. All right, when this number is 1, it's nice and easy. It's just over top of 1. But if this number is something other than 1, you need to reduce these fractions first. All right, and then we're going to use a Drake song in order to help us to factor this out. These two fractions actually tell us our factor form. So we can write our two parentheses, and then we're going to say, started from the bottom, now we're here.
Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom.
All right, and what that means is the number in our denominator, so we start from the bottom, that is the number that gets multiplied to our x variable. So since it's a 1, it's saying 1x. All right, so we start from the bottom, now we're here. So whatever number we have in our numerator, that's what gets added or subtracted to our variable. So this is saying 1x plus 2. So we started from the bottom, so whatever number is there, it's 1, so it's 1x. And we started from the bottom, now we're here, so it's a positive 4, so that means it's plus 4. So this factored form is going to be x plus 2 times x plus 4, right? And that will be our final answer. All right, so now let's go ahead and do this method one more time. So the first thing we do is we draw our x, and then we're going to go ahead and write the multiplication sign at the bottom, and we write our plus sign at the front. We find a number in front of our x squared. We multiply it to our constant. So 1 times negative 10 is equal to negative 10. So we will write negative 10 here. Whatever number is in front of our linear term, this drops here, so it's minus 3. All right, so now when this is a minus sign in front of our constant, that tells us our two signs are going to be different signs. So we can go ahead and write plus and minus because these two numbers have to be different signs in order to multiply and give us a negative 10. And now since it's minus, we're saying which two numbers multiply to 10 and have a difference of 3. So we can write out all of our factors of 10, 1 and 10, and 2 and 5. Well, 10 minus 1 gives me 9, and 1 minus 10 gives me negative 9, so we know it can't be 1 and 10. And 2 minus 5 gives me negative 3, and 5 minus 2 gives me 3, so we know we're using this sign. And now we look. Whatever the sign is in front of this linear term, this minus, that is the sign that the larger number has to follow. Right? So that means that this is going to be minus 5 and positive 2. And if we add these two numbers together, 2 plus negative 5 gives me negative 3. 2 times negative 5 gives me negative 2. So this positive and this multiplying sign helps us remember how we're generating this top and bottom number. And then we need to divide each of these by the number in front of the x squared, so it's 1. And remember, this tells us our factored form. So we write our two parentheses out, and we start it from the bottom, so it's 1, so it's 1x. And now we're here, so it's 1x plus 2. We started from the bottom, so it's 1x, and now we're here, so it's minus 5, so this is minus 5, and this is our factored form. All right, that is it for this video.